Hey, this is Cavallo. Welcome back. We're going to talk about, well, it's kind of a spooky story day today. That's right, we're going to have ghost stories. We're going to talk about he ghosted me, why men disappear. Why do they ghost you? Well, we're going to give you 5 reasons today. Hey, let's get going, but let's also remember to do that big 3, right? Number 1, make sure you like and subscribe to the videos. Click that little bell icon below to turn on the notifications. And number 3, make sure you leave me your comments and questions below so I know what to make the next video on. You know, if I had a dime for every time a client told me he ghosted me and then asked, why did he ghost me? Well, yeah, I'd be pretty awesomely rich. Let's take a look at the definition of ghosting first. Ghosting is breaking off a relationship, often an intimate relationship, by ending all communication with a person without any apparent warning, no justification, no warning, and ignoring the former partner's attempts to reach out and communicate. Which means that it's a harsh ending to something as lovely as a relationship, no matter how short-lived the relationship was. Now, the fact is that a guy can seem totally obsessed with you, and then seemingly out of nowhere, he disappears and stops responding to your texts or your calls. Now, this disappearing act is called ghosting. No, it's not fun to experience, especially because it feels like the rug just got yanked out from under you. And then you're left wondering, he ghosted me. Why did he disappear? Why did he just run away? It's especially confusing because he seemed to swing from really into you on one extreme to the other extreme of ghosting you like this. Were his feelings even real? I know he ghosted me. Was it something I said or I did? Well, from my own experience being a guy who dated women, I tried to never leave any woman saying he ghosted me. Even when it happened, it was usually a mutual ghosting, right? You know, one of those dates where you just didn't click, you weren't really into each other, and a text or a follow-up text or a call just didn't seem very necessary. I've also had plenty of times where she ghosted me, and we'll come back to that again in a bit. Now, let's just spare you the stories of college guys or anybody under the age of responsible here. We all know that the younger we are, the more likely we are to ghost somebody just out of our own discomfort around awkward social situations. But before we jump into the answer to, can you tell me why he ghosted me, I want to take a second look at what really comes up when you feel a guy pulling away from you like this. When you feel the ghosting happen, do you feel scared, like the rug is pulled out from under you? Do you feel abandoned, like someone just left you, even though you know he was never really there to begin with? Do you feel rejected, like he just screamed no at you and ran away, even though he never knew anything about you really to reject? Do you feel clinging, like you don't want to let go of this feeling of the connection you had, and you're not quite sure if it's ever going to come back to you? Well, those are just some of the feelings that come up in a person when they feel the sting of being ghosted appeared for them, but it's only natural. Let's talk about it. Number 1 reason he ghosted you, he actually liked you. This one's going to seem like a contradiction, but it can be eerily true. Yeah, he maybe actually really liked you. Sometimes a guy really likes you but just doesn't know how to move it forward. This is often where the pain of him ghosting you overrides your compassion for where he is in life. It doesn't mean there was anything wrong with him or you, but that feeling of his pulling away activates all kinds of crazy stuff and childhood stuff and mom stuff and, you know, stuff. But let's get back to the good news. He liked you. Yes, it's totally possible and likely that he really liked the you that he saw. And now he's not sure if he either deserves it or if he knows what to do with it. He had his own reasons and he ghosted you. Because he might have had a lot of his own life stuff. Childhood stuff, dad stuff, you name it stuff. So take a little bit of happiness in that you were likable, and for whatever reason, does it really matter? Really? He just couldn't be there for you right now. Who knows? Maybe he'll be back around later. Or maybe you enabled him in some way so that when another woman comes along, he can say yes to her and not ghost her. Why did he ghost you? Reason number 2, yeah, super freak. Some guys do a freak out. They freak out a bit when they run into their own feelings and attraction for a woman. Guys don't spend a lot of their time in an emotional zone. Let's face it, we know this, right? We're very much thinkers and doers. We don't naturally embrace the emotional side of life. Now, I need to caution you that this doesn't make a man's experience wrong in any way. A man's drive to connect with his energy and his work and his action, that's his connection to himself. And it should be praised and celebrated. But we live in a world right now where a man's way of being is seen as mostly negative and hurtful. And that's a shame. Remember that an experience that is not yours does not mean that it's wrong. only that it's not an experience you can relate to or share. Beware rejecting a man's way of being. That's the seed of all disconnection in relationships that I've ever seen. Don't reject his masculinity or the way he is, or you're always going to be disappointed. Remember, men may see your emotional experience and pull away from it, but is your experience wrong? No, right? Well, don't pull away and reject his experience of himself. It's not wrong. So if he freaks out when he runs into his feelings for you, and the first reaction he has is he wants to separate from it, right? So the bottom line is that he freaked out because he just wasn't ready. So what now? Well, he'll probably pull away for a while to get his bearings. You might need to be patient and reconnect with him later on. Rant a little bit that he ghosted me and then laugh it off. Could you be open enough to letting him go and seeing if he's ready maybe in a few weeks? Why did he disappear when things were going good? Reason number 3, you missed it. I typically see women in 2 situations where they say he ghosted me. Number 1 is he genuinely seems into you and then he disappears, and that kind of ghosting makes your eyes roll because you're confused and frustrated. The number 2 situation is he ghosted you. He really did, and there's something nagging at you about it. You're wondering, is there a reason or was there a cause for it? Was it you? Were you enough? Were you good enough? Now that question is a tough one because now we're back into the land of your stuff, right? Where you remember maybe being a little girl wondering the same thing around your mom and dad. Were you enough? You wonder if there was something you missed about the time you spent with this guy. Was there some signal you might have missed? Well, maybe there was, but it's not something you look back and worry about or ruminate on. This just leads you down that spiral, the endless spiral, into your own sadness. You just have to open your eyes a little wider and realize that there are signals that men give you that tell you if they're fully there with you. It sucked when he ghosted me. Reason number 4, he thought it was too much. Guys run into a lot of women that want to use us for life preservers. We find women that want us for support, both emotional and financial. We find women that want us to keep their bad stuff, the stuff in their head, right? Childhood stuff, mom stuff, all that stuff. They want us to help them keep it from being unbearable. Guys do that one too. We find women that really want to latch on to our individual strength, kind of like a baby to its mother's breast. My friend Gary said that he went out with this girl once and he thought she was pretty, smart, funny, everything he wanted. She seemed pretty relaxed and light, easy to be around. They even went out on a date that felt very relaxed and comfortable. They were just walking and talking in the park. Well, things got pretty comfortably physical and they started to get a little intimate and they found themselves kissing for a while. And it was all great until she said to him, she kind of whispered in between kisses, "You know, I thought this might be special." Now, Gary went along with that because it felt really nice and he was also enjoying the makeout session. He didn't want to switch to words like this right away, though. It felt like too much. In reality, what she said to him was probably more about her need to justify getting intimate like this. She didn't want to seem like she was being a slut. She had to make it special. Well, a few more minutes of kissing like this, and again, she broke into telling him how she really felt warm and safe with him, and she even started crying a little bit. Now, later on, Gary looked back at that and felt that that was just too much too soon. And he sensed that there was a slippery slope here. If he re-engaged this girl on another date, he felt like he might have, some floodgates open up, and way too soon. You see, a guy has a different pacing in a relationship than a woman does. You almost can't take it too slow with him. And if he seems like he wants to go fast with you, go even slower. It's because of his willingness to embrace you that he will likely reach right back in and jump in with you because your hearts are hungry, right? Sometimes this suits you and we can be that guy for you because we're ready, but sometimes we're not. Reason number 5, he thought it was too little. Even worse than when a guy finds that she's too much is when we find out that she just needs the companionship, but she can't accept him as a man. Now, these days it's really fashionable to trash men. It's all in service to uplifting women, which believe me, I 100% support. But we have also found ways to do that by pushing guys down, and that's not good. If I want to get to the top observation deck of the Empire State Building, is it easier to ride the elevator up to the top or to pull the building down into the ground? Well, the second option seems like the most absurd, time-consuming, tiring, and futile way to get where you want to go, right? And by the time you got that accomplished, by the time you brought the building down, all you'd see is rubble around you. You wouldn't see the New York City skyline. There would be no altitude to enjoy, no lifting up or taking anyone higher. And yet, yep, this is one of my Carlos clever metaphors here. That's exactly what we're doing when we resort to diminishing men to elevate women. It even seems like an easy way to do it until you realize that you're just wrecking the building for everybody. No one gets to touch the sky. So when a guy finds a woman who isn't able to surrender into being a feminine power for him, he realizes he's never going to be nurtured. She's always going to fight with him. She'll always want to change him or fix him. He will never find the warm acceptance that gives him permission to let down his guard and really love her. And he might actually love her, but he'll never love the us that they create together. And the guys that want a woman to act like a man are the guys you really shouldn't go anywhere near. They're definitely going to make you feel unsatisfied, angry, and alone. Ignore this idea of gender roles or no gender roles. Just let yourself be the you that you must be. And if that gets in the way, go talk to a therapist, work it out, get clear, and then be amazed at what happens when you don't need to control him, the relationship, or even you anymore. A man is glad to lift up the woman that lifts him up. And sometimes a guy feels that you're too little for him when you weren't as available as you might have thought you were. Now I know this can sound incredible, but there are just as many women out there with intimacy issues and commitment phobia as men. Yeah, there's just as many. We men just show it in wildly different ways than you do. So when you aren't available, a man can tell. That's when a lot of the whole "he ghosted me" texting and anger comes up for you because, well, maybe you weren't enough over your ex, or maybe you weren't over your mom or your childhood. There are a ton of things that we don't see about ourselves. You know, it comes down to this. You can't love a guy enough to make up for not loving yourself. Kind of sounds like a cliche, but it's true. You can't do it, and you can't be fully available to him until you really don't need him in that way. What do you do when you feel yourself being frustrated, knowing, oh my God, he ghosted me? Well, typically the number one resource for this situation is where you start texting your friends, he ghosted me. Your resource is actually your own compassion. Now, I'll confess that when I first started this whole video and this particular article on ghosting, I'll confess that I almost wrote about who are you gonna call Ghostbusters, which I guess I just did do, right? Okay, so let's just roll with it. Do you want to bust his ghosting? Maybe, but it's also not realistic to embrace this idea of being combative and destructive to keep a guy from ghosting you. The whole Ghostbuster thing is really just a funny image to see those guys with their proton packs on and trying to take those ghosting guys out of your life. You might even find yourself silently chanting, yeah, get him. But you know what? Consider that this guy might not need to be busted. Maybe he just needs something else from you. And even if you don't get this guy back, maybe it meant that you needed to see something about you in the process. In that moment, you felt maybe abandoned, rejected, snubbed, cast aside, unworthy, whatever you felt. There was a reason those feelings came up. And it's not because of low self-esteem or any of the things they tell you in those clever bestsellers or some of those other websites out there. It's because there's something you don't know about how men work. And until you know how men think and how they behave, you're never going to be able to get them to love you the way you need them to. Imagine when you can walk next to him, your skin glowing, your hair perfect and flowing, wearing just the right dress, and you know he's not just ready to love you, he wants you to save him. That's right, as a woman, you can elevate a man from just some lusting man into a better human being, and he will thank you for it. He'll thank you with his love, and he'll beg you to be his. If you want to find out how that's done, go to that little link you see below me right here. That's right, follow it. You know where it goes. It goes to a great video presentation that will tell you how to do that. And as always, don't forget to do the big three before we leave this video. Number one, like and subscribe so you keep getting the videos. Number two, turn on notifications so you know when the new ones come out. And number three, leave your comments and questions below so I know what questions you got and what videos to make. Hey, this is Carlos Cavallo from datingadviceguru.com. Feel free to go over to the site. You can get the rest of this particular article where I cover more detail about why he ghosts you. And as always, live and love with passion.